Hi, my name is Ember Kelley, and I am the Director of Religious Education at the Fourth Universalist Society in the city of New York. Thanks for joining us for this digital minimalism journey video. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about the spiritual aspects of this journey. I'm going to be sitting down with our senior minister, Schuyler Vogel. I hope you stay tuned and enjoy the video. So everybody, I am really excited that our video today is talking about the spiritual aspects of this digital minimalism journey that we as a congregation have been on. And I'm very excited to get to sit down with Reverend Schuyler Vogel, our senior minister, to talk a little bit about the spiritual implications of a digital minimalism journey through Lent. So thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Ember. I'm glad to be here. And I guess to start, our audience may or may not know that you have been doing a digital Lenten experience of digital minimalism yourself in your own personal life to augment these conversations for our community. I'd love to hear about how that's going, what you're doing, and what lessons you're learning from that.
Yeah, it's been really great. So yes, I've switched to a flip phone. I had to find one that did group text solely for the purpose of Sunday morning teams of for our services that I could group text everybody. But once that was doable, I found that to be pretty rewarding. And so I've been cutting back on screen time, both in the sense of switching to flip phone, but also really limiting myself, really trying to set more clear work boundaries in this time of like digital work. When it feels weird to sometimes say I'm on this digital minimalism journey when I still spend 8 hours of my day in front of a computer or an iPad doing work. But it really has been a profound journey, and like that, I would say has had like a spiritual. It's been a spiritual journey. I think a few like starter thoughts would be that it's helped me identify areas that maybe I didn't realize that I was addicted to, like the seeking approval by posting things, or always, being on the lookout for the likes and the next hit of like, oh, there's a notification saying that somebody did something. So like, recognizing that for what it is, that it can really truly be an addiction in a lot of people's lives, and seeing that I needed to step away from it. That's been really great, but it's also just like really cleared my mind and helped me focus on like feeling out what's a bit more important and grounding in the world around me, like in my more immediate vicinity, and less like, what does this person who tweeted at me from Oregon, like what do they have to do? What is their opinion of this thing I tweeted? I should have said Idaho. That's a better random state that no one thinks about. What does this person from Idaho think about my tweet?
We're gonna get all the angry comments about people from Idaho listening to
I'm
this
sorry,
podcast
Idaho.
now.
Hashtag
Trouble.
hashtag Idaho for this one. But like, so instead being like, okay, what's going on in this local community? What's going on in New York City? What's going on at Fourth? And getting to be really so much more focused. It's helped me like I've talked about it in some of the other videos. It's helped me like prioritize my connections, like that I'm not constantly looking to be connected with people. Instead, I'm being very intentional. Like, I want to send this text to somebody. I want to message a friend. They want to intentionally think about messaging me, instead of like, oh, I saw you on my Facebook Messenger list and saw that you were online and wanted to talk. It's a very different approach to communication in our world. I've even like set some time limits on like emails, and like, to only check my emails between like a certain 4 hours. That's probably still the hardest of the habits, is to not constantly be obsessed with like, okay, what is my email doing at 6 o'clock in the morning? I don't need to check my email at 6. So instead, I've been practicing a morning routine. I started really consistently in like that would have been December of of 2019. All these years blur together with COVID. So I started it in December of 2019, and it was pretty consistent until about June when I started prepping for the move here. And I was just so busy that I couldn't really find that time to take the morning practice. But then by September, once I was settled in again, I've gotten back in. So I'm at like 6 months of consistently waking up early and setting aside some time in the morning. But it was still very easy for me to spend a lot of that time online, to get caught up in like scrolling through my phone while I wake up. And so now I've been really intentional that I just this last week started going on a walk, basically a walking meditation every morning. I have my phone on me, but it's a flip phone, so I don't have instant internet right there. And I don't so I don't have anything that's going to distract me. I don't bring an MP3 player or anything. I go and walk, and I listen to the birds. I heard an owl the other day. And it just, I walk up to the shoreline of the very polluted but still somehow beautiful Newark Bay, and watch these huge ships go past. And it's this really profound experience to get to sit there and just feel at peace and not feel a need to have a screen in front of my face.
It strikes me in what you're saying, how countercultural it is to practice digital minimalism. Our whole society is built around cultivating this addiction, both in the sense that our very practical lives are, in the sense you were saying that, and this is true for so many of us, right, that in some ways our work requires us to be online constantly, even before the pandemic, right? Emails need to be responded to within 2 business days. We're doing Zoom meetings now. We always have to have our phone if we're traveling, right? We can't afford to be late. We don't have maps. We kind of need to be addicted. We need to be engaged in a way, and these technologies are designed to addict us. It's not a casual thing, right? These companies, the social media platforms, have made it a goal of theirs to keep us engaged for their own profit, for their advertising. And so to try to break away from that is to wrestle with a profound question of what are the dangers of this modern life? How do I find myself within that and keep myself? How do I practice intentionality when all these structures around us are structures that try to slide us into mindlessness? The mindless scrolling, right? The little spikes of chemicals that we get when we get a like on Facebook or on Instagram. The even our emails, right? We get that email pop up and we get that little spike of, I think, serotonin, right, that comes up and gives us that, like, oh, something happened, right? It's an addictive thing. And it doesn't have to be that way, but by taking control of it, I think you are doing what all cross-time spiritual people try to do, which is to live lives that are their own, that they feel free to commit to a life that they want to lead. And in some ways, the whole structure of our world today, basically, without asking us, forces us into a life that we don't consent to. It dominates our mind and attention and our feelings and the chemicals of our mind. And you are basically rebelling against that, as we all should in a way. But of course, you can't do it entirely, which is sort of like the sad thing about it, right? Like, you are here on Zoom talking to me now. We have been going through our Google Doc lists of agenda items and emails that we've been exchanging all week. And so we can't ultimately ever escape it permanently unless we want to separate ourselves entirely from human community. But I wanted to name just how countercultural it was. And I'm curious about how, as a spiritual person, as a Unitarian Universalist, Ember, how that decision mixes with your understanding of yourself as a religious person, as a liberal religious person.
Well, I think that it's, I was already talking a little bit about community, but like, as you were talking about, like, that, we need our phones to have our maps, but like, suddenly you have this lost art of map reading. Like, a lot of people don't know how to read a map. A lot of people don't know, like, they just know a compass because it's like the image that's on the Google map. Like, people but like at the same time, like if you truly get lost, it's this it's an immensely like rewarding thing to like talk to a stranger and be like, oh hey, like do you know which direction this is? Like could you help me could you help me figure out where I'm going? Like you're having to rely on others, which is a very human thing to do. Like, you know, that's what we have done for centuries as human beings is relied on each other in community, whether that's with a random stranger that we meet on the street, like, you know, that um, was when we were still fairly new here, but getting to know the city of Bayonne a little bit. Someone drove past us and was like, "Hey, could you tell me where this store is?" And I knew where it was, and like that was so rewarding to me to be like, "Ah, yes, I know." Like this means I'm really a resident now that I can give directions. You know, these little interactions like with strangers become like much more fulfilling experiences when it's not like, oh hey, now that I helped you, could you add me on Facebook, and like we're just going to randomly like each other's photos like once every couple of years, and you know, we turn like acquaintances into long term, like expecting them to know all about our lives. Like it's really helped me like prioritize in my spiritual journey and my journey as a liberal religious um, person to think about um, what are human needs and what are the best ways that we can take care of ourselves. I mean, as you said, I don't think that to me, you know, while it's really appealing to like, you know, go live in a cabin in the woods sometimes, like that sounds really nice. Like I still really, I'm a city slicker, for real. Like despite growing up in the Midwest, I still love my cities. And
The
I,
Midwest has cities.
hey, Midwest has large towns. No, it does have some good cities. I don't know if any of them are in Wisconsin, but that's a debate for a different day. Hashtag Wisconsin. Um, we're just getting Idaho and Wisconsin angry now. But you know, um, like it's good to be in this connection and finding meaning in the community and connecting with one another. It's really honestly helped a little bit with like my social anxiety. Like I previously I would have said that I have really strong social anxiety, but as over the last few years, and then especially like over these few weeks so far, as I've really made steps to limit my time like on my phone or on social media in my life, it's really helped me be like, okay, like, is it that I'm like, what, how am I responding to the nervousness? I'm pulling out my phone and I'm ignoring everybody. Like, why don't I just be friendly? Like, does everybody else is feeling the same way? Cause they're all looking at their phones too. So, you know, how can I begin making these connections? So I think, you know, the real freedom and beauty is like this freedom to build more authentic connections and more community, that while digital spaces can offer us that, and like, you know, I still watch YouTube, but I actually am watching less and less of it every day. um but like I enjoy like some level of community, and like it's it's always nice when I watch a video about somebody else who quit social media and I'm like, ah, I feel inspired to continue doing this. um that, you know, but the sense that you can get of community and belonging in like a more local, more grounded sense can be really, really impactful. Um, you know, obviously, I think that, you know, that there's areas like I know that like as a kid, as a young closeted trans woman, like having the internet was a lifesaver for me. Like so, but I think that that type of internet has been replaced by this, you know, algorithm machine that wants to spit you advertisements. You know, that like um, the internet of my youth is it was slightly less addictive, and what the main goal wasn't like, let's keep you around on here. You know, it enabled you to connect maybe to some folks, but it wasn't like live on the internet. So I think that um, the internet technology, it can bring us these wonderful gifts, but like we shouldn't let our whole lives be all digital. I say this as I, you know, lead a religious education program online.
Well, I think to that, like, there's different, you know, there's like you were saying, there's different ways that technologies engage with us and our souls and our hearts and minds. I think videos and even a lot of in social media, I think things like Reddit are less aggressive and less addictive than organizations like Facebook, right? Where their whole algorithms are designed to get you there, where they're not social media sites really, they're advertisement sites that use people's eyeballs as profit. And so if we understand those places as that, um, we get some perspective on what we're doing when we're engaging, right? Because those things aren't designed to build community. They're designed to get you to stick around. And there's all sorts of ways that they could make it for community, but they've chosen not to because that is a different business, right? And they're not in the business of making community as we might believe that they are. So I think like it's complicated. But I think it also is important for us if we're talking about spirituality and talking about the humanity behind these technological addictions and the pull that we feel. I talk about like why people feel compelled to go there in the first place, and I do think that like loneliness is one of them. People feel connected to the larger fabric of society. I think that speaks oftentimes to a lack of that, like you're saying, of authentic, genuine human relationships in person. That people aren't able to have, don't want to have. I think we live in a very disjointed world right now, not just during the pandemic, but you and I both do not live in our hometowns. You and I both don't live in towns that we went to school in either undergraduate or graduate school. And so we don't have any ties to the communities we live in. We've had to build them. And so the ties we do have are far away, and technology is one way to do that. But I think there's like a genuine desire, but I think there's also more troubling reasons why people go online, which are things that come out of a harder personal space, a need for affirmation that's not getting met otherwise, that gets twisted then into sort of a deep insecurity. I have felt the pressure to get likes, and making a big life announcement, see how many people like it, or how many people comment on it, and then like feeling like maybe it's not enough, like maybe people don't like me, right? That's somebody who, like, I wasn't even raised in that world, and I feel like I'm a generally fairly confident person, but I've heard people describe it like if you're doing something and it's not online, does it really happen? If you've done something amazing and no one knows about it online, did you really do it? And so there's a way that social media and technology define our reality, that if you don't post it to your how many friends on Facebook, does it really matter? If only you and the people in your part of the world know about it, right? Because the world in some ways is defined by those social media sites, right? If you can post something on Twitter and get a bunch of people retweeting it, and suddenly people know about it, that's power, not just for yourself, but for the world. And I think there's something that people get really attracted to when it comes to that. It's a way of not feeling forgotten, because people see you and they respond to you. And so we need to find a way of making sure that people feel seen and heard and loved and cared about, that they can do things that are worth noticing, and they don't need to be online just to post about it, that they're not any less real because of that, because those things are not fundamentally what define us as people, or should be, because it's not a metric that is not designed for our own well-being emotionally or spiritually, right? It puts us into competition with each other and makes ourselves question our values, right? Our value as a person. Because if we're only as good as how many likes we get and how many retweets or how many comments, then we're always going to be questioning and always having to prove ourselves. And you can always get more likes, you can always get more comments, you can always have more followers, and there's always someone who's going to have more. And so if we define ourselves by that, it'll be a very unending source of unhappiness for us, because we'll never be good enough, ever. So trying to find and cultivate ways of spiritual grounding and identity beyond technology, I think, is very important.
Definitely. Why not? As kind of a closing thought, I think, you mentioned like the ads, the algorithms, like, yeah, this is definitely, we live in this disjointed world, and we live and it's very normal for people to feel disconnected, that they don't really have any meaning in our society. Like it's a product of our society, the way that it's set up, for sure. And the internet does offer that place, but then people have now made it that they can capitalize and make money off of people's feelings like that. And I mean, the algorithm is just like, now that like I'm on it even less, the algorithm gets even creepier, and I think it's like grasping at more straws to try and advertise to me. Like, um, so my youngest Asher was asking me about like did I have a DS, a Nintendo DS when I was a kid, because he plays on ours, and so I showed him like some of the old models of the Game Boys, and all of a sudden, after showing him like the Game Boy Advance, then like I'm on a different website and it's like top 12 games for the Game Boy Advance, and then I go onto YouTube and it's my favorite games from the Game Boy Advance. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm on the internet like this limited amount of time each day, and it is like
Mm-hmm.
this algorithm is so desperately trying to like loop me in and be like, you really need to buy a Game Boy Advance to find meaning in your life. Like that. I think that is the truly dangerous part. It's not like I'm a very much like societal minded person. Like I'm trying to take these personal steps because I think that this is important for me and my own growth. But like I understand why people are on the internet, and I understand why these connections can mean a lot to people. And I don't think that stepping away completely is for everybody, but like maybe finding some limits and figuring out some ways to just do it slightly more healthily, so that you're not letting your life become this profit tool for some nameless corporation. It's advertising you random sweatshirts that say like, I'm a grandma from Portland who loves knitting. Like, you don't need that sweater. Sorry, grandmas from Portland who love knitting. But yeah, I think that as spiritually minded people, as justice minded people as well, like we shouldn't let our lives become a commodity for these corporations.
So, Ember, as we close out here, what would you say to people who have grown up their entire life with this technology? We're both in our 30s, and that means that we have a degree of separation from this growing up. That I didn't get my first cell phone until I was a junior in college. I had Facebook before I had a cell phone. And there are people who are younger than us who may be listening to us and say, what a bunch of old fogies who are, complaining about this technology and act like it's some horrible thing. And like, here we are just living our lives and enjoying the fun of, Instagram and TikTok and filters and videos. And like, can't people just chill out a bit and, stop just ripping on the next new thing?
Yeah, I think that you raise a valid question, but I think that the interesting thing for me, as I've like kind of explored this little corner of the internet of like digital minimalists, I feel like a ton of them are actually young people. Like that they're like, oh, like they're on these comments on these videos and they're like, I'm 17 and I just deleted my Facebook today. Like I'm so tired of it, or like, things like that. Like that I think that young people are honestly leading the charge of being dissatisfied and feeling like this is all kind of pointless. Like, for me, I think, I may not be quite as old as you. No, not that many years that separate us. But that, so as somebody born in '88, like I pretty much, I had a time before the internet, but like basically as like the internet was coming to be this more fully bloomed thing, was alongside of me. Like so like by high school, like there was MySpace, and then by college there was Facebook. And so like I've been on this for a good portion of my life. That was, I mean, MySpace I think I had back in 2004. So I mean that's 17 years of social media in my life. So for young people who've only known that for the 17 years, like there is other ways to do things out there. Like I think that, but in my mind, in my heart, I believe that young people are actually the ones really leading this charge to say like, hey, I'm tired of just being like a digital point for these companies. Like I want to really be making some meaningful work out of my life. So I think that in my mind, young people are leading the way. At least that's my hope.
Just to echo that, I know that there have been studies done about fake news online, and that young people who use social media are actually far more savvy at discerning truth versus falsehood, and based on what they see. And so, whether or not young people versus more older people using more or less technology, the awareness around its effect, and clearly some skepticism from the younger generation around what is out there, is healthier than perhaps other generations have. And I could imagine that if one grows up with it, one's able to be able to see the tricks in a more intuitive way, and see the fact that it is a corporate tool to gain profit, which they then use consciously for their own purposes rather than buying it as something that it is not, which perhaps those who are less good at spotting fake news and getting addicted to it and posting bad memes, right, as we have seen, how dangerous that is. Perhaps there's another conversation about the spiritual depravity of falsehoods on social media that is really real.
Schuyler, this has been a phenomenal conversation that I've really enjoyed, and I hope that our listeners also have really enjoyed getting to hear about this and think about this. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments about what you think the spiritual aspects are of minimalism. But Schuyler, this has been wonderful. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Ember. A lot of fun.
Yes, and thanks as always to all of our listeners. You guys making this content worth it, because we love hearing from you and going on this journey together.